Ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon, and all protocols observed. It is my immense honor and pleasure to be with you today for the third South Africa Investment Conference, joining you on this distinguished stage once more to moderate the tourism panel. It is my great honor to be here, and I bring with me enormous thanks and appreciation from my Secretary General of the UNWTO, Serobe, for whom I am blessed to be the special advisor and who sends his personal regards from Brazil. He knows how grateful I am to the South African Department of Tourism and especially the lovely Honorable Minister of Tourism for bringing me back home to South Africa. As much as I am in my office flat in London, having sadly left South Africa 3 years ago, my heart is still in South Africa. As we say as South Africans, my blood is green, and I'm very, very grateful. I'm here together at a time when our world needs to cautiously, considerately restart the momentum of the tourism sector. Reason being, we have seen through COVID-19 the invaluable nature of our sector around the world. When the world became grounded in March of 2020 because of COVID-19 spreading rapidly across the world from east until west, 16,000 commercial aircraft were grounded. Borders and skies were closing immediately, and we found immediately as well the economic impact and the social impact of travel and tourism. Our sector is about tourism, it's about travel, it's also about trade, and critically, it's about supply chains, keeping people and communities all around us working to support our essential sector. As we all know, this investment conference will provide a critical platform to showcase growth and investment prospects in an economy with vast potential and enormous resources, natural resources, human resources, creative resources, and of course, great competitiveness. The theme of the panel's discussion today is tourism and hospitality post-COVID-19, reflections on sector reset and opportunities in the new landscape. Our focus will be looking at the role that tourism can play in economic recovery, both globally and domestically here at home in South Africa. It is perfectly timed for South Africa, as His Excellency President Ramaphosa announced last week the borders opening for international travel once more. The world is waiting to visit South Africa. South Africans are waiting to welcome back the world. We need to make sure that we do this in a way that is safe, secure, solid across the industry, and absolutely sustainable, restarting and resetting the future of tourism growth. In the next 60 minutes, we're going to be spending time again taking His Excellency President Ramaphosa's fantastic news of opening up the world to South Africa by opening up our borders. And in the next hour, we're going to look at reestablishing destination competitiveness, gaining market share. How do we increase employment, attract essential investment, and vitally, how do we stimulate economic growth, thereby taking advantage of the anticipated global growth in travel and tourism, especially as the world opens up to all of that pent-up demand we know is out there for people wanting to travel, having been grounded for so long. We have with us today an exceptional panel of speakers that join us from around the world. I am thrilled to see them with us, and I ask you all to please join me in welcoming. First, we have our beautiful Honorable Minister of Tourism of South Africa. Madam, it is delightful to have you with us. Thank you for joining us. And I have to say, I am mortified that I had to mute you behind stage. Please forgive me. My Secretary General will fire me for doing this, so please forgive me. But thank you for joining us, and thank you, Madam, for your tireless leadership during this exhausting time. You have been on the front line, you have been a champion of the sector, and you have been embracing it, taking all South Africans with you as we wait to open up the world. We also have with us Gloria Serobe, the founder and CEO of Wiphold and a member of the South African Tourism Board. Thank you so much for joining us, Madam. We're delighted to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We also have with us Xhanti Payi. He's the economist and director of Nascent Advisory and Research. Thank you for joining us. We have with us as well Bart, Dorrestein, the CEO and chairman of Legacy Group Holdings. Thank you so much for joining us. And we have a very dear friend of mine, Maribel Rodriguez, the senior vice president for Europe and Latin America for the WTTC, the World Travel and Tourism Council, another tireless, like everyone present today, entity working every day to make sure that our tourism sector reopens in a way that gets everyone back to work, consciously and cautiously. A very warm, loving welcome to you all, and thank you for spending this time on this important panel. Before we begin, we're going to jump into a quick context-setting presentation simply so we can set the scene for our discussion, and we're all looking at ultimately the same framework. So I'm going to ask if you can please switch over to the slides itself for the presentation, and then we will jump into the presentation. So I can ask my backstage wizards to please put that up. That would be fantastic. And if not, then not a problem. We will jump forward itself. The whole point of the presentation was to ground in 5 critical facts. Firstly, as we know, this is not just an economic crisis. This is not just a travel and tourism crisis. This is a global healthcare crisis, and one that has sparked a humanitarian crisis. It's the first time our entire world has been connected by one invisible crisis that has all of us in a state of shock and in a state of fear in terms of what is ahead. As a result, the travel and tourism sector, which, as I said up front, is essential, needs to make sure that we are opening up again cautiously, keeping a very delicate balance between lives and livelihoods. The second thing we need to focus on top of that is the critical role of aviation. We know that for domestic, regional, and international travel, aviation is vital. With international travel being down 70% so far this year, and as the WTTC rightly acquired the statistic right up front of 1 million jobs being lost per year, in a sector that used to generate 1 in 10 jobs worldwide, we need to make sure that aviation opens up. But it needs to open up in a way that is sustainable to be able to get the momentum going back again. In terms of momentum, the third point, we learned from IATA that ultimately the momentum of air travel that we had last year, the great blessing of being able to go anywhere in the world, anytime we wanted to, we will not get that momentum back until about 2024. It's going to take a significant amount of time to get those air routes in place for travel and for trade. The fourth thing that's really critical is making sure that we have what we need in place to be able to assure people of healthcare. We need to have the vaccines in place. We've seen in the last 10 days with Pfizer and now with the latest news about the vaccine coming out, how desperate the word is to travel again. But we need to get the vaccine rolled out, distributed around the world, and everyone taking it in a double dose. That's going to take time. Critical, however, is all the work that's being done around quick testing at airports to make sure that people getting on the planes are COVID-19 negative. And ultimately, everyone is going to be getting to be safe getting from A to B. That will also impact ground travel. It'll impact as well hotels. It'll impact the entire supply chain. The fifth thing, which is vital, is ultimately traveler confidence. We need to make sure that travelers feel safe and secure to be able to travel once more. So I'm now going to jump into the conversation and ask all of our lovely speakers to please join on stage as I ask you all this question. To begin with, Madam, our Honourable Minister of Tourism of South Africa and our dear champion and guardian angel, I'm a firm believer that Mother Nature knew exactly what she was doing. We saw that our global economy, our global society was growing quickly. We had many blessings, but she wasn't happy. She wasn't happy about how we dealt with sustainability. She wasn't happy with, from a tourism perspective, we weren't focusing on domestic enough. And she sent us back to our rooms for 9 months. And we've all been grounded and we've had to focus on the future of travel and tourism, but reopening it and restarting it the smart way, making sure we have unity, inclusivity, opportunity at all levels. Honourable Minister of Tourism of South Africa, Madam, and my dear friend, for whom I have great love and respect, please can you share with me, why has this time been an exceptional opportunity for tourism in South Africa to rebuild stronger, smarter, more united, more inclusive, and more opportunity generating. Because of this time, we've had to stop. Why has this been a blessing in disguise?
Thanks, Anita. Let me greet fellow panelists and also thank those who are following this discussion. Indeed, it is an honor to be back on the stage of South African Investment Conference for the second year now as tourism. We are back on the platform as having focused discussion around tourism. It's because tourism remains one of the pillars of tourism, of the economy. I do believe as a champion as well as a leader that we have great opportunities that would emerge out of here. Yes, we've had hard lockdown, we've had difficulties, both that were brought in by a pandemic that we never anticipated. But if you look at what we have done at the tourism sector and the portfolio in looking at our tourism recovery strategy, it's got various pillars. The first one was looking at the domestic market for us to revive. It looks at the regional market and also global. But what is interesting that links to this work that we are doing and why we are here today, we emphasize the importance of protecting the supply side of the tourism sector. Now, protecting the supply side means that the infrastructure that we have, the investment that we have currently in the country in terms of attraction, be protected, but also go out and start, bringing more investment into the country. So, as you say, we've seen difficulties, but there are opportunities. I speak to a number of people who say, yes, we've taken a dip, but tourism is one of the resilient sectors compared to many. And yes, because we've seen unprecedented, what happens now. But if you look in terms of where we are starting to see the trickling effects of almost coming back. The opening, yes, we've opened, might not be able to see holistically us recovering because globally there's still a difficulty in terms of other countries. But we do believe that as we do, and as you're saying, Anita, the work has started, but South Africa is in a unique position with own attractions, but huge opportunities for investment to be done. I mean, those who are sitting here following me, I want just to say, Anita, we've got so investment pipeline, by the way, as the department that we do have literally areas that we think that are seriously untapped, that could still be tapped. And that's huge opportunities, and we'll list it later. Just not as an opening. This is what is critical for us, and just to give comfort in terms of South Africa standing, in terms of policy certainty, in terms of business continuity and support, where we are literally in the forefront. Myself as the minister, and I think with the support of the president, with one of the sectors that he's been really paying attention to.
Fantastic. Honourable Minister, thank you very much. And I must say, your whole tourism recovery strategy, one of the most powerful elements of that is how you have brought together the public sector and the private sector. That is unique in how you've really stepped up the genuine partnership, because everyone is in a need of recovery. It's not an either or. That's very special. In that same vein, I'm going to send it to Maribel. And if you can please share from your global perspective of the WTTC, why you think this has been a blessing in disguise in terms of creating a stronger, more united and more sustainable tourism sector of the future. Please.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you for moderating today, and thank you, Minister and fellow panelists, to be here today with you. Well, first of all, you mentioned about so many million jobs being destroyed because of the situation right now. We have to review the figures a little bit, because the good and positive news that we are having right now are that China improved, and this helped a bit at a global perspective. But still a lot of work to do, as you mentioned, in Europe, of course, in Africa, LATAM, and other regions. And the public and the private sector now, more than ever, they really need to be together and work together, because we are not going to be able to go through it alone, working in different relations. So when it comes to sustainability, when it comes to what to do now, there is an opportunity, of course, because there is an opportunity to do destination stewardship. There is an opportunity to diversify the products, where to travel, using more new segments. The ways are different. Actually, we have launched a new recent report, which is called The Future of Travel, where alongside our members and authorities, we have been trying to understand and enforcing what are those new trends. We are, in one side, of course, super sad about not being able to deliver the 1.3 GDP that we are bringing 1 out of 10 jobs, but at the same time, we are very resilient. As you all know, it's an opportunity for all of us to reconduct our industry, and of course, very important and key, be working together, public and private sector, and we can talk about that later, maybe what are the initiatives that we are currently doing. But that's are, for me, the message I wanted to share right now.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Maribel. And it's lovely to have your WTTC perspective, and importantly, credit where it's due. The WTTC has been remarkable in how it's been working and creating a global community to find a global solution. So thank you for everything you and your Gloria are doing across the world, and everyone.
Sharing best practices. It's a time to all of us tell to the other what we are doing that it works, what is not working. Instead of repeating the mistake, just go for the good one, right?
Indeed, indeed. And now we go to Gloria, representing the South African Tourism Board as well. Gloria, can I ask from your perspective, in what we've experienced this past year, why is this the perfect opportunity to rebuild tourism in South Africa in a way that's smarter, more solid, more safe, and more sustainable? Please, madam. And I think we have you on mute, if you can just. Stunning. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. Good afternoon, Minister and colleagues. I think the nice thing about COVID is that the whole world is resetting. We're not the only one. That's a great opportunity. Everybody's in trouble, and all the sectors have got to reset. So I think our starting point is that we are all balanced at this point. Now, tourism is one of those sectors that has been hardest hit, but at the same time, I have to say that it is the one where access to the sector is much simpler than other sectors. It doesn't necessarily have to be capital intensive, so we can always regroup and come back to it. It does have a lot of low-hanging fruit, and that we can take advantage of. But key for South Africa is that the country itself must throw itself behind the tourism reset plan by the minister and by the tourism board and by the private sector and everybody else. It has to be an integrated approach, to be fair. There is also an interesting challenge, which is the one of interesting our domestic tourists to tour domestically. And actually teach them again about what it means to tour in South Africa. And there's quite a number of things, because some of our history is not covered in syllabuses. For example, if I were to give 2 examples there, 3,000 kilometers of sea coast, 3,000 shipwrecks. All the divers, the scuba divers, they are looking for shipwrecks in case they find something of a historical nature there. But then our shipwrecks are mainly in the Wild Coast. And that is really in the Eastern Cape, where the infrastructure is a challenge. And so you can't reach it, but the history is actually sitting there. The big famous shipwrecks are actually sitting there. Same thing as with all our 9 frontier wars over 100 years are also concentrated in that kind of area. But they are hidden behind the difficulty of the infrastructure, when in fact the history is larger than the thing itself. Now, if we are going to compete with countries like Croatia and so on for a tourist, whether it's domestic or international, we need to unlock that. And therefore comes in the integration in terms of on the government side and even on the private sector side. Department of Education, Department of Tourism, Transport must look at the roads, all of that. That infrastructure is key, because we've got, that is low-hanging fruit. We have to unlock it by just putting some ease of, it doesn't have to be capital intensive, this industry. It's quite an easy industry to go into. Everybody's looking for battle sites, battle graves. I'm tired of seeing people's graves. We've got graves here. And I think those are our low-hanging fruit. Thank you very much.
I must say, Gloria, I loved your comments from the point of view, especially that tourism is a history book brought to life. It's such a lovely way in which you've explained that for whatever isn't in the curriculum, through domestic travel, South Africans are able to understand more about their history. And this is why I always argue that our lovely Honourable Minister of Tourism was very smart in encouraging people to travel domestically, because it does indeed increase the value of the supply chains being remobilized as an economy. But as you say, we discover things that we never would have thought of before, and yet that people are traveling across Africa and across the world to discover in our own backyard. It's a really beautiful principle. And then marrying, as a result, the academic community with the tourism community is going to be so important to building in that fresh new history into the curriculum itself. It's a lovely, lovely position. So, gentlemen, I've been following protocol and had ladies first, but I'm now going to shift over to yourself. So please, may I ask, Xhanti, yourself, from your perspective, why is now the time for a smarter, more solid, more secure, more sustainable tourism once we come out of COVID-19 lockdowns?
I think. Thank you very much, Anita, and thank you to the Minister for inviting me, and of course, good afternoon to my fellow panelists. I think the main thing, of course, while we are talking about a recovery, we also have to recognize that we have new opportunities. I mean, I think if we start to think about the changes in the way we work, that has changed fundamentally. I'm sitting now in my lounge, and that means that actually I spend all day here, and I spend day after day after day attending my meetings, talking to people, and nothing ever happens. So if the way I work has changed, I think the way we take a break, the way we do leisure is going to change. And I think we have to actually recognize that. And that is going to be important because clearly South Africans spend all of this time at home. They're going to want new places to go when they step outside, weekends away. And so the domestic environment actually is much more related to actually the way the world of work has changed, because when we are not working, we want to actually be having fun. And I think that is an important conversation to be had by many of the tourism sector and tourism sector providers, service providers, because they've got to recognize that there's something that has changed. And I think that's connected, therefore, to something many people in South Africa have been saying about our tourism industry, that it has been for far too long been very nestled or tilted towards foreign demand rather than local demand. And I think that means that there's an opportunity now also to take the opportunity of the growing local demand because of the structure of the change that you've seen brought about by COVID-19. And I think we should think about that. And I suspect also the service providers have to think then about market segmentation. Of course, we know that we prefer the dollars more than we would prefer the rands, but certainly there's an opportunity now to balance that out. But I think more importantly also is this idea of we've seen our vulnerabilities, and that opportunity then means we're going to do a little bit more in terms of investing in infrastructure. And the president has already spoken about that very clearly. And he says, we're going to do that in the partnerships that we have to undertake to build infrastructure in the most remote places of South Africa, where many people have not been able to reach, but can do that now because we are actually going to invest in that infrastructure. So I think international partners have a grand opportunity then to come on board and actually, connect. I think not so long ago, I was speaking to one of the tour managers who is international. And he said, look, we've always wanted to bring people into the remote parts. It's just the infrastructure has been difficult. I think there is an opportunity now for that partnership. And of course, when we build that infrastructure, we create more jobs in the South Africa economy because, construction is always the easy part in terms of including South Africans. So I think we are actually on the cusp of something very, very positive. We did not always recognize it, but here we are now. These changes, we should take advantage of them. We should be glad in some ways that, this opportunity has been shown to us to leverage so many new opportunities, and some that have already been there, but we were just sleeping on them.
It's such a beautiful point that you make, that indeed so often destinations around the world think they need to create more product, they need to create more experiences. South Africa is so blessed with an abundance in that regard, cultural, natural, spiritual, economic, all of those. It's now about the engineering to unlock people's accessibility to those experiences and the understanding around it. It's a lovely point. Thank you for sharing that. And I must say, I like your excitement when you speak about that. That's great as well. So thank you. Bart, from your perspective, sir, why do you think the time is now and it's the best time ever for the future of tourism in South Africa?
Well, I think the first thing is, it is what it is, right? So we've all got to sit down and look at the realities that we face. And the realities are, there's a balance sheet of negatives, and then there's a balance sheet of positives. And as the Minister was saying, the only asset that we really have in South Africa, not the amazing asset that we have, is each other. So the first thing that we've got to look at is how we as South Africans are going to now carve a new future for us, cognizant of the environment that we're living in, looking at all our pluses, and then looking and also assessing all the challenges that we have. And the challenges that we have, obviously, is that we're far from the main markets, so travel is going to continue to be probably expensive. But on the other hand, what we really got to look at is say that tourism is a byproduct of success. It's a byproduct of the success of a country's economy. And what we've got to now sit and look at is how do we get our economy in South Africa to blossom and grow and make us the attraction of the world to come and invest in, because we've got so much going for us. And one of the first things that every successful country that's come through this better than others, China for one, but it started there, but they've come through it much better. They've still had a growth rate in their economy, is that they in actual fact have been able to start and make things at home. They've become a manufacturing producer for the world. Now in South Africa, we've got this incredible opportunity. And we sit and we worry so much about unemployment. But our biggest asset that we have is the 10 million and underemployed families. They represent for us the demand. All that we have to do is bring them into the production of the supply, and we've got a winning economy. Now, the moment we start getting a winning economy going, the world is going to want to come and invest in us. The world is going to want to come and visit us. And we've got to be realistic that, as you've said, it's going to take a while before the pure vanilla tourists coming to visit us again. Though I think there's a lot that we can do. There's a lot more that I'd like to suggest maybe a bit later that we could be doing. But the main thing is for us is to make a vibrant internal economy. It's not just to invest in infrastructure. It's to invest in sustainable infrastructure. And most importantly, that huge asset that we've got, our youth, who are going to be our future leaders. Get them to become participants in our economy. Open up the doors of opportunity for them. And all of a sudden, there's a different picture. And Africa, in many ways, that is its opportunity. We're not a mature economy. We're in actual fact still a developing economy. That's exciting. So what we've really got to do is look at that aspect, and then tourism will follow. Tourism will blossom and grow because everybody will want to see a miracle of what's happening in South Africa. And most importantly, obviously, those wonderful and amazing assets that we have dotted all over the place. Wildlife, nature, great environment, etc., etc. So I think that's the focus. That's what the world has told us to do. Is guys, look to yourselves. Find the solutions at home, right? Grow within, and then the rest will follow.
Indeed. And it's beautifully said, because as we say, South Africa is absolutely alive with possibility because of South Africans. That's what's so critical about that. I'd like to take this now to the Honourable Minister. Madam, to that point, everyone here has some such important points about what's required to make this really work. As we are focusing on attracting global investment into South Africa, as you've said, infrastructure is there. We've got a solid investment portfolio. How is the Department of Tourism, how is the government able to support being able to attract investment, the right investment, to develop South Africa as a tourism destination the right way? What can you share from your perspective around the thinking, the smartness of thinking in that regard?
No, we've got quite a number of areas that we're working on. Firstly, as a team that works together with the broader investment group and Secretariat of Government that looks at broadly with the investment portfolio, is We've been working around the clock as a team, both to look at the issues that are raised by investors as enablers to be able to unlock investment. So either it's around regulations, either it's around issues of ease of doing business. So we look at those things. For example, recently I've been interacting with Bart as one of the investors who would say, I've got people abroad that I would want to bring here. So can you bring enabling environment in terms of your visa system that I'm able to bring? So we are able to go and have a discussion. So this is one of the things that we've put in the table to say we need to resolve and have an easy way of getting visas for people who are coming to work in the country, especially the skills that we do not have, so that we can be able to enable the environment for that. So that's the first thing. We've identified that as a major stumbling block. If you look at the economic reconstruction and recovery plan of the country, one of the enabling environment is around the skills, being able to open up the country to be able to have an easy access for the skills to be able to come so that we can nurture our environment. So that's one of the things. The issue again around our Department of Trade and Industry and Competition, where they've set up a portal that will be one-stop to allow investors so that they don't have to do a lot of compliance across departments and all that. So that's work in progress. That has been paid attention to. It's something that we are looking at. From our side as well, we take a serious initiative. We actually, from the Department of Tourism, look at the issues that an investor is raising, follow up on their behalf, link them with municipalities and be able to sort out. So we've got what we have done, Anita, is that we've done an analysis, we've interacted with investors to understand the challenges that could be an inhibitor for us to be able to get those investment in. So that's the other thing. Another area that normally is raised by business in terms of investment sort of inhibiting is the policy certainty environment. So you do find that as something that you find our potential investors raising from a portfolio of tourism. We've been having policy certainty over time, but what we are doing now, we've announced our policy review to be able to adjust with where we are, because our last policy review was done in 1996. Now we are working, so there is certainty, because we want to ensure that when we adapt, we've got the technology taken care of, because many people, in terms of technology, in terms of the sector, but we're talking sustainability of the tourism sector. So there are issues that we must follow. This morning I was at a Global Forum Council, which I'm a council member for WEF, and we're talking sustainability. So there are issues that we need to consider from tourism point of view. And those are some of the things that we are doing. But also some of the things that we're trying to do is to bring those who are investors, who are local investors, but because there's issues of inclusivity, there's issues of diversity. So we are investing our own resources as government to ensure the transformational agenda.
Fantastic. I love the principle that you're leading by example in that regard. But you said something so interesting about the fact that rather than being a country that says, this is what we have, come and get involved, you've actually sought out, tell us what you need, and we'll make sure those policies and those offerings are in place. It's almost a very customer-centric approach to be able to track in investment partnerships that genuinely build for the investor and for the destination itself. It's a beautiful approach. Maribel, I'd love you just to add on top of that, because you've done incredible work on the WTTC to make sure that part of the infrastructure that's being put in place for destinations as they open up is around health and safety and protocols. What are you finding? Because South Africa has been very blessed to have received the safety seal from the WTTC in respecting the protocols that are required as part of the essential infrastructure. What are you finding is critical from an investor perspective in terms of being able to understand the smart decision in investing in South Africa?
Yeah, well, first of all, South Africa is the number 30th in our investment research that we have done one couple of years ago. Of course, for what we require and what are our recommendations is the connectivity, the visa facilitation, and nowadays security. And when we talk about security, we talk about the biosecurity and putting the health component within the value chain end-to-end of the journey that is going to be happening not only in South Africa but worldwide. In this sense, and as you know, Anita, we have been working very tireless with our members, destinations, other organizations to develop protocols for the private sector, with the private sector, because they were already doing so. So we work with hotels, with the train, with airlines, airports, OTAs, outdoor experience, every single, almost 11 verticals to develop those protocols with the aim to bring back the trust of the traveler. When the traveler is ready to go back, is ready to start traveling, they need to have a minimum common security worldwide that will give a sense of confidence and trust, which is something we really need to tackle now. When we have done that, then we found out that the destinations were very interested as well, okay? So we started to work with them to be able to have, again, a recognition, because we are not doing any sort of audit. We are not that. It's nothing to do with us, but we wanted from the private sector helping the destinations to be able to have this like brand or mark, which is going to be indicating, look, you are doing the right thing. And so far in South Africa, we have been working with many destinations, and they have already the safe travel stamps endorsed by us, like, for example, Cape Town, and as well associations like the Tourism Business Council in South Africa. So you are doing a great job, and we encourage to keep on moving on, because it's very important. It's a sign for the consumer when they are traveling. Oh, okay, those are doing what they should be doing. And it's the same in South Africa, the USA, some part in Europe or China. Let's say it's like having like a common framework of protocols that, of course, then locally you will need to have and tackle your specific, which are totally local, and we don't want to do anything there, rather than helping you to understand this common framework.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And if we build now on what the Honourable Minister has said and what Maribel has added, Gloria, you are very blessed that you have an exceptional CEO in SAIC at the head of South African tourism. From a marketing perspective, from a destination demand perspective, the team has been working incredibly hard to keep the conversation going, keep the interest going. What is the first challenge that is being faced in terms of now putting out the invitation to the world in an increasingly competitive time, now that borders are opening, around why South Africa is that destination everyone's been wanting to go to, but now is the time to book?
Thank you very much, Anita. One thing I think, Minister Tourism, we have to say that what has been helpful at this point is the clarity on how to get here. I think that was very, very important. And secondly, we are endowed with a whole lot of attractive places to go to, and there's no struggle there in terms of actually getting to do that. And thirdly, I think because everybody still has anxiety and fears, it is fair to say that the South African government's response to the pandemic had the praise of the world.
Absolutely.
In terms of how quick and how fast things were done and all of that. And as much as we are 7-8 months into it, and while we were all experimenting with something that we didn't know and we had no reference point in the world, even though we had countries before us already have, but we were actually experimenting with something menacing, and we didn't know what to do with it. But the response of the government has to be given that kind of. So a visitor to South Africa has less fears about coming here, simply because we have taken that crisis head on, and leadership has been shown strongly from government and strongly from private sector. So insofar as the stability around, can I go, even though I'm allowed, I've got 72-hour tests, am I exposed? It's very clear that South Africa has been extremely quite military about how they responded to the pandemic. And so the rest of what SAIC has to do is to actually sell, especially to the domestic tourist, as to what South Africa has and that we didn't know. And because some of them are prisoners here now, they would probably like to travel out of the country but they are limited. And so they are traveling internally here. Amuse them with what we've got. They didn't know it. Make them know it. And that is what CISA has to do.
It's lovely that you say that, because it's very true. To your earlier point, His Excellency President Ramaphosa, the speed with which South Africa shut when there were first signs of trouble, that was celebrated around the world as exemplary in terms of taking the challenge seriously. And then it goes to what the Honourable Minister has said around looking at what are the barriers for investment. We take those seriously, whether it's visas, policies being refreshed to make them relevant today. I love what you're saying. And on top of that, you add in the domestic tourism. When you have a domestic market that is excited about traveling in its own country, you make all the international and the regionals jealous, because it's a matter of, wait a minute, you get to experience your own place, which is fabulous in creating that solid foundation of demand that's not dependent on regional and international. Right at the beginning of, actually middle of the actual pandemic, Aidan Thomas from Heart FM in Cape Town asked me for an interview. And I said to him that how fortunate was South Africa that as the pandemic was striking, you were going into the low season. It's not as if in the Northern Hemisphere, they were going into the summer season. So you've had the season to work through, do the engineering and the re-engineering the Honourable Minister has been speaking about. So as the world is reopening for Southern Hemisphere summer, and your tourism is growing, you're ready for it to come back. That is, Mother Nature was on your side in that regard. There's no question. I think she's waiting to come back to South Africa. But I want to take it now. I'm going to ask Bart, because you spoke earlier about the human capital that South Africa is so blessed with, especially youth. If we look at youth development and bringing in the next generation of leadership, of ambassadorship of South Africa for South Africans, how do you feel we as an industry should be focusing our attention to really leverage the investment opportunity through youth development? And then I'm going to switch it to Xhanti to ask about what difference that's going to make at an economic response. Bart, over to you.
Well, I think the first reality is that the world invests in people who have confidence to invest in themselves. The second reality is that whilst we look at our balance sheet, and our balance sheet at the moment, courtesy of Corona, has further extended, and we're struggling, right? As other countries are in the world are struggling, we really got to sit and say to ourselves, what does the balance sheet of South Africa look like? Do our assets exceed our liabilities? And the factual reality is that they do, right? We're not very liquid, but our assets exceed our liabilities. We can certainly then on that basis create an internal economy when the money moves around inside our economy and it doesn't leave, it's safe. The moment, however, we start to buy in, import, which we do a hell of a lot, okay, we've lost our ability to manufacture at home. Once we do that, the money drains our economy, our balance of payments go out of whack, and we're in trouble, right? As are many countries in the world, right? Because most of us are buying from the East. Right? So what we really in South Africa now at this time need to do is to say what we're going to start making things at home. And making things at home needs and demands that to recognize that the un- and underemployed represent the demand. We've got to bring them into the production of the supply. And that's the most exciting and rewarding opportunity for us. We've got to sit with government, and government's got to look and say, listen, let's listen to that narrative. Does that make sense? Because it really does make a lot of sense. The less money we have tomorrow, and the more we can do internally at home, the better it is. And once we've got good at it, as the Chinese and others have shown us, then in actual fact we can start to export our expertise. Right? So let's start practicing at home. And that practicing at home, more and more people into the demand side of our economy, and then they're going to come in what we're talking about, ultimately going to become tourists, because they're going to want to have an experience of it. We're going to have to go through that route. And you know, Gloria and team, I think we're in for a torrid time in tourism, in particular in tourism in the cities. Cape Town and Johannesburg, sitting and looking at Christmas, right? People traditionally leave Johannesburg, right? They go on holiday, right? So Johannesburg and our hotels and all the hotels in Johannesburg are really, really, the corporate hotels are taking strain. Part of the reason being that our gentleman up there said, you're sitting at home and having a meeting from home. We're all sitting here and instead of us being together in the convention center here in South Africa, we're doing this from home. That's a huge problem. We don't like that, okay? So, but what we've got, if we look at within Africa and we get together and we look at what we have and we start saying, well, look, Africa for Africans, right? I promise you, when we start to do that, we start to stimulate our economy, we sit together and see how we can do it, how we can get things going, looking at our weaknesses and our strengths, using those opportunities to correct the areas that we have. And over the period ahead, that's what we're going to have to do. In the process, tourism will improve. I mean, I hope that we're able to convince the UK not to put all their wannabe tourists who want to come and see us in for quarantine for 2 weeks when they go back. The problem isn't in South Africa. The problem is that they're having to go into quarantine. I understand, Minister, I had good news. I understand that the EU isn't that way. The EU says when you go back to Europe, you only have to have a test from this side and prove that you're okay. So that gives us an opportunity to start to sell us. It's very difficult if you know that you have to go into 2-week quarantine if you want to have a 2-week holiday. That's quite a tough exercise. So, and I think just, there are so many positive things. I think there's Mr. Biden, who's now in charge, right? An older gentleman, right? His narrative is suddenly calmed suddenly. I find his narrative is great. It's calming, right? It's calming for all of us. I find our president's narrative incredibly calming. He's a strong leader. He's doing a damn good job. But what we've got to do is let's stop looking outside for the solutions. Let's start looking at home. And there are some amazing people at home of all shapes, sizes, colors, and creed who so desperately want to contribute to getting South Africa to work. That we've got nowhere to go. We can't afford to go anywhere, right? So we're here. Let's start making it and building it together. And I think our president's an excellent leader to do that. He just, in actual fact, needs to get us, a couple of us, more of us around the table. I know he's doing an excellent job already, but a lot of us should be sitting around and saying, how can we make small businesses work? Because that's where the opportunity lies. And boy, oh boy, there's so many people hungry to participate. We just open up the doors, and I think we could be a flipping economic miracle. And we could take that expertise and export it into Africa. Be fabulous. That's what I think we should be doing.
Bart, you've hit several incredible points. The two that really stuck out for me were, firstly, the reality that the cost of travel is no longer financial, it's time. And it's the risk of people having 14 to 28 extra days added on top of their trip over and above what they're spending on the trip itself. And the fear that people naturally have of regulations changing, it's suddenly lockdowns. In the same way, and I want to go back to that, just the incredible South African spirit, that a week ago, 10 days ago, how many people were speculating South Africa was going into a second lockdown? There was all of this speculation. And what ends up happening when His Excellency takes the stage and he makes his national address? The borders are actually opening up. It was completely the opposite. And so it is that grabbing that opportunity to really make a difference by making sure citizenry is the first supporter of making that positive change. I thought that was absolutely beautiful. And to that point, I want to go to...
And you know what?
So, Gloria, go ahead. Please.
If I can just add to what you're saying, I thought, when our president made his speech, I think it's a week ago, right? And he was actually saying to South Africans, basically, guys, go out there, get on with life, wear your mask, don't expose yourself. And what was the theme of Mr. Biden, right? I listened to him and he made a fabulous speech the other night. He said, listen, America, we're in a hell of a trouble. I think there are over 200,000 cases a day now, right? And he said, guys, we can't change. It is what it is. Just go out and wear your mask. Go and wear your mask. right? And it's so true. We've just got to accept it, that it is what it is. You know, we can't do too much about that, but just let's make sure that not more of us get sick. Let the world know how well we've done, and be acclaimed for how well we've done, because, you know, we seem to be bucking the trend. I don't know, it must be somebody up there's holding a flag for us, right? And, you know, let's get the message out there. Tell people that we're a good place to come and visit, right? Yeah. And then, Minister, your job, which you do well, you've got to go and beat up your compatriots in the UK and all those places that want to have two-week lockdowns when they come home, quarantines when they come home. You've got to tell them, look, guys, you know, we're doing it our way, so you guys better do it your way so that we can get on with life.
Indeed, because this is the ultimate, as was said earlier, this has been the ultimate crisis for forcing international partnerships. It's no longer just about the destination, it's the source market. And what is the condition of the source market leaving and coming back home? So exactly to that point, dear sir, Mr. Payi, I have a question for you. Through this crisis, it has been made very clear the economic value of tourism as a stimulator of direct and indirect supply chains. What do we need to do to help our dear Honorable Minister of Tourism to get through to other sectors the incredible power of tourism as a sector to stimulate cross-sectorally for national growth?
I think that you started by saying, especially you wanted to focus on youth, and I think I want to start there. One of the most incredible things about tourism, I started by saying, of course, that, the pandemic has given us a new opportunity for South Africans. But I think there's also this threat that we've been afraid about, which is the fourth industrial revolution or innovation that is going to threaten jobs. But it's also it is the one place where it actually can help us, it's going to create a lot of jobs, yes. Right? Because we need innovation. We need actually people to think about how we're going to access these places. And young people are at a very, very good place to innovate through apps and all sorts of gadgets that allow us to see what South Africa looks like and the places we want to go to book in special ways, to do all sorts of exciting things. And I think in particular, because we've already invested, and it's the one place where we can take a chance on young people, because already we've invested quite heavily on the infrastructure. So remember, during the World Cup, we had all of this infrastructure, the bed and breakfast and everything. So we've got the beds, we've got the areas where to go, places where to go. We've got all these really good hiking trails. So young people already have an opportunity then for us to say, look, the one place you don't have to take a risk on you is there. Go and see what you can do with those places. And I think young people will surprise us in terms of what they can innovate, in terms of actually bringing us into the tourism sector, taking those assets, taking those resources and making the best of them, and using technology to actually mesh those things up. So I think the minister and the company, and colleagues have to actually say, look, what can we do to hand them the assets, to hand them the resources, so that they can actually innovate and use these things. And I think you can account any kind of thing. I mean, Marcel was talking about the fact that we are now locked in, and so we have to do things. For the first time this year, I went to the Kruger. I mean, I've lived in South Africa all my life, and I've never been to the Kruger, but we've had to actually go and experience South Africa. And it's actually quite crazy because, now we can take working trips, we can do all of those things. And I think, and that's also young people. I know hiking, a friend of mine has started actually bringing us together to go hiking. And those are the opportunities for young people to take advantage of, to actually use and empower themselves and participate in actually creating this very exciting and dynamic market. And I think one of those things is to say, how do we then say, if you are, the Minister of Agriculture can maybe open up some of that land so that people can go and create exciting things that we can do for young people to be able to actually participate using technology, especially to bring us closer, to show us these things, new ways of payment. So there is a really great opportunity to actually match up what I think other industries are afraid of in terms of innovation for young people to use, and where actually many other industries will say, the cost of entry is too high. Here we've got the assets. We've got, we don't have to take that much risk on young people. Yes. They already exist. And we can get so many of them employed in tourism. And of course, they've got that South African spirit. They've got the energy, I mean, if Jerusalem tells us anything, this song that everybody's been dancing about, is that there's huge appetite for us. It's just that we've got to actually invest in young people, and we've got to give them the capacity to do this. So there is a lot of money that is available. And I think the job sector will be able to do that. It's unacceptable that we have so many young people that are unemployed when there is so much of the resources that have already been invested in across the economy. And we need to now actually use that in terms of actually saying, how do we actually latch in all of those resources together, those partnerships? And you're quite right when you ask, what does the Minister of Tourism have to say to her colleagues? She has to say to her colleagues, do whatever you can to support these young people with all the assets and the resources to make sure that they can participate in tourism, because that's where I think it's going to happen for some time, and where we can also take risks on each other. And I think I'm quite impressed also, with the recovery strategy of the minister. It's quite clear we are speaking directly to the issues that we've been facing. Now, how do we actually make sure that it's all coordinated, we can sequence it, and we can bring in young people? I think it's a quite exciting time, and we should take it.
I must say, I love what you were saying, and the concept of youth and bringing them in comes in more. But when you spoke about the Jerusalem Challenge, the Honorable Premier Windy was saying recently when he went to see some of the frontliners dancing that has become the anthem of 2020. If you think about it, to see all the healthcare workers and everyone trying to dance, and all the young kids embarrassed watching their parents trying to do the moves. But what a beautiful way of lifting the spirit. Maribel, we're going to teach you how to do it, because you need to get a W.
I'm looking forward to it.
It's glorious.
A lot,
But I want to build on the concept of youth, because, and I'm now going to flip in multiple roles. I was recently on a session for the University of Johannesburg, the School of Tourism and Hospitality, talking about higher education needing to build in stronger curriculum for people in the tourism industry and looking at it as a professional skill. Madam, you've spoken about how we have this incredible asset base in South Africa, including South Africans. How can we leverage the academic environment to, as Gloria said, build in tourism destinations as part of our history, but also create those admirable, aspire towards careers in tourism? Because often it seemed to be quite limited, but we need to actually get the professional job, career path and job development so that those young girls can look up and say, one day I want to be like her. I want to be the Honorable Minister of Tourism of South Africa. How can we do that for youth through the education system? Please.
No, there are quite a lot of things. There are quite a lot of areas that we are already working on and also supporting. For example, we're talking about institutions of higher learning. We've had partnership as the Department of Tourism with institutions of higher learning to look even in terms of research and development to support our vision and almost saying this is what we need to achieve as South Africa in those areas. That's the first thing. But the second area, one of the things that we're looking at is linking institutions such as University of Johannesburg School of Hospitality has got a good system. We've got TUT as well. But one of the things that we are now looking at is to say, how do we enhance that? How do we make sure that it's actually more even linked to employment? Because what we are picking up is that you find that we've got young people who've gone to do generic training, and then when they come out of the institutions, they are not able to be placed because experience is lacking and all those things. So those are some of the things that we're currently looking at. But from a technical, what we do what we would call artisan training, Anita. So we train definitely as the department, we invest in young people for either you call sommeliers, whether chef training, and we literally have quite a number of our chefs who've come out of the program of the Department of Tourism and are in international kitchens, literally doing well. I had encountered one when I was in US, and she was saying, no, I don't have to go home, I'm now fine. And he's working in one of the big kitchens. So we're doing that. We're also doing in terms of safety training. So there are quite a lot of programs that we've got. So there is a skills development strategy that we have as the Department of Tourism, working together with our SETAs. These are sector education training authorities, but also again working with our higher education department that is focused on post-school. Currently, there are proposals from many people as we do the review. Somebody last week, I was in Soweto, and they were saying, shouldn't we start inculcating some of these things into our curriculum at basic level, basic education level? So we'll look into the proposal as they come for policy. We'll obviously engage our sister department and my core minister, my minister in basic education. my colleague, so that we can be able to see what is possible. But I do think that there are opportunities. It's just that we've not been very structured properly to link between the employment and the education and the skilling part of it.
You make such a lovely point, Madam, as well, about the fact that it's not just tourism and hospitality. By using the artisans, you're keeping the culture alive. You're keeping, I always think as well, what's magic is that when those artisans become involved and they're younger people, they're keeping their parents' and their grandparents' history and culture alive and traditions in another way. It's a beautiful way of building into the arts and culture space, not just in the tourism space, which is really quite special. Maribel, I'd like to turn to yourself for a moment in terms of what the WTTC has learned about how youth can be engaged in the industry at a long-term level, and particularly in terms of career development and pathing, because you've got some unique experience in that perspective.
Well, as we are very inclusive and diverse and gender equality sector, as you know, more than 50% are women. It's the only place when you can start as a bellman or a bellwoman and finalize like IMG. You can, geographically speaking, you can start working in Latin and going and work in Asia and then in Russia and then going back to where you are from. And in terms of language skills, a lot of people is like moving around. Let's say is an amazing sector to work with. We have been pushing for that because we recognize, we have actually, even some of our ExCom members, they started like very basic and now they are like a super CEOs in important companies. So it is an amazing industry that we need to rely on. And now being competitive when it comes not only from the point of view of the human capital, which is really very important, the job, looking at who the customer are going to be, the ones and the first that are ready to travel are the millennials, because they are free to travel. They don't have any sort of, commitment less than other sort of generations, and as well they dare to travel. So it's a good tip for all of us to think about them when it comes to what are the trends and how to approach them. But yeah, we are super engaged and focused on that. Of course, when the pandemic hit, we have to put on hold our current job that we were doing in terms of job development and the fitting of jobs. We will come back to that, of course, but it is very important. It's, as you said, very inclusive, and as part of our one of our main strategic pillars, which is sustainable growth. This is part of it because they are part of all the entire value chain. So, as you all know, is very inclusive and diverse.
Indeed. And I love what you're saying as well, that it's leveraging youth, attracting youth, because that will be one of the first segments that's going to start moving. If we talk about one attracting the other, I want to speak to something that was spoken about a little bit earlier around Africa attracting Africa. Because we have, for instance, ASEAN as an exceptional model of how up to 70% of ASEAN traffic before 2020 came from ASEAN itself. And Gloria, I know SAIC is a real champion in the fact that we've got to get African connectivity to be able to unlock the African tourism opportunity for African countries, and working together on that. And the Honourable Minister has been very much involved in that as well. I'd love to be able to play with this idea. And Bart, take it back to you for a moment, because you were speaking quite a bit about that interconnectivity and making those connections to unlock that infrastructure. From an African development perspective of South Africa unlocking the potential for tourism into Africa and getting Africa into South Africa, what is a priority that needs to be focused on in the next 1,000 days?
In the next 1,000 days. I think, Anita, the African tourist into South Africa is no different from the international tourist into South Africa. They're looking for the same thing. We have to understand that even for our own continent, we are competing with the rest of the world to be the preferred destination for tourism or even investment capital if they so want to invest. We have to understand that. And the rules are the same. People are looking for the same things. Consistency in our messages. Our rule of law is great. And also partly because we have to convince the world that because we have a handle on the pandemic, there is no need for the 14-day quarantine for anyone from us. The 72-hour test is adequate. We have to work hard at that. And I think the important thing here is that because the COVID, if we are talking about COVID, it is still a health-related problem. That's the basic thing of COVID. Our health messages must be very strong. We have to tell the world we've got the top scientists here. We've got the top doctors here in case something did happen. We are actually equipped to actually respond to any possibilities of somebody gets into trouble health-wise here and all that kind of thing. And I think lastly, is just to say, for any tourist, even from the continent, we've got to be very knowledgeable about our history. That is why we are at our weakest. I go to Europe. I look at these people with masters in arts and masters in this, and they are tourist guides, and they are rattling their history like it is amazing to listen to. We've got to emphasize on that, I think, Minister, in our education, in terms of directing these top students into dealing with our history and speak about it in as passionate as everybody else has. And so even the African tourists, even the tourists from the continent is looking for the same thing.
Indeed, indeed. And it's true to your point, because Africa has 54 different versions of history and culture and opportunity for all the 54 countries that are on the continent. You're absolutely right. And it's maximizing that and making sure it's part of our learning. Bart, I'm going to push it to you for a moment from your perspective around how to unlock that African tourism opportunity. And then Xhanti, I'm going to turn it to you as well after that.
Okay, well, I think, first of all, obviously, for a long time, South Africa has been the business and lifestyle capital of Africa. Nelson Mandela Square, claiming to have that as its brand. So, and I think we've lost it a little bit, and we lost it a little bit for a number of reasons. One of them is that our cost of flying to South Africa became a lot more expensive than flying to Dubai. And Dubai was a lot more customer for a period when we went through tough visa regime. Dubai was a lot more visitor friendly. But as things stand now, I mean, that's history. And what we really need to do is somehow open up the air routes into South Africa using the airlines that we have. And, you know, there's some good players out there, Ethiopian and Kenyan Airlines, and obviously Emirates and Qatar. And open those air routes in such a way that people can fly and city hop as opposed to country hop. Historically, one of the challenges that we had was that a plane like from Europe, Lufthansa, would drop people in Johannesburg and have to turn around. It'd actually be quite nice if they could drop them in Johannesburg, move on to Cape Town, pick up people, and then go out. And likewise regionally. So we've got to sort of try and globalize a little bit the airline business into South Africa. And very important is somehow try and get the cost of travel by air in South Africa to become economic. Now, that's quite difficult at the moment because of social distancing and plane loads and lack of trust. But I mean, the sooner we can do that and open up Africa, one is they're closer to us, which makes it better. Two, the people throughout Africa are desperate to travel, right?
Indeed.
And, you know, so that I think is a big tourism opportunity for us. And it's an opportunity that certainly, I think, we're attractive. We've got great properties, we've got great assets. And I think that's a very important. The other factor is a large part of Africa comes to South Africa to shop, as opposed to go and lie on the beach, etc. And that helps us in our city hotels. That helps us in places like Johannesburg, and obviously Cape Town, the waterfront, fantastic asset, has taken a knock. And I mean, we have 2 hotels in Cape Town, and we're not seeing an uptick yet. We're seeing hopefully some local tourism, but we're not seeing enough of an uptick to get us to say, well, listen, we're going to open and fire on all cylinders. So the sooner we can open those doors to Africa and make Africa attractive, and if need be, our government helps and subsidizes travel into South Africa, the knowledge that there's going to be expenditure there, as has happened in the case of Dubai and some of the other areas. I think that's important to kickstart a renewal for us, and I think that would be very useful.
It's a very, very good point, and it's maximizing that opportunity, but it has to be kickstarted. You're right. Xhanti, from your perspective, the African opportunity for South Africa, how do we unlock that?
Look, I mean, I think for the most part, I think the rest of Africa has already been traveling to South Africa. And I think, if you look at the numbers, we are really a great beneficiaries of that travel market. But I think that the important thing, and I think because we've seen it recently, is that we need to sensitize, I think, South Africans to the opportunity itself. I think one of the things we have not really been good at is that, we have had this weird, strange preference for European travelers rather than for African travelers, and therefore we have not actually taken the opportunity to design it in such a manner that allows us to do that. And I think it's, of course, it is because we have not really realized the potential. I mean, and so many, countries on the continent, tend to be dollarized. Many of the people, of course, use dollars. So we're still actually earning quite good income in terms of actually foreign exchange, and we should actually appreciate that. And I think a lot of operators have not taken advantage of that, and I think that's a great thing. But also because actually, to take back to the youth, South Africa is still very much an exciting place if you think about it for young people and young travelers in terms of both the cities, in particular, the party life, the shopping. And so we also understand, what it is that, the rest of the continent is looking for when they come to South Africa for South Africa's tourism. And I think one of the things we haven't done, as I said earlier, it is going to be important for so-called market segmentation, yes, to actually think about what we're going to offer to different people who come to South Africa, whether you're an African traveler, you're a European traveler, you're a young traveler, you're a local traveler, you are a worker who is in South Africa like me, who needs to actually every once in a while get out of my house and actually enjoy the leisure of the rest of the country. And I think that's the awareness we need to have in terms of strategically think about how we're actually going to segment these different markets and attend to them as best as we can.
It's true. It's a very good way of putting it. And it links exactly what the Honourable Minister said, is understand where the barriers are and then focus on finding solutions there rather than focusing on reinforcing the same old solutions. As we wrap this up, because we started a little bit late, so we pushed a little bit late. And I must say, I'm getting some interesting signals from backstage to say we're going to stop recording in an hour. And I thought, goodness, they're clearly really enjoying this conversation. I might not get dinner and get it sent to your host. But I want to ask you all a personal question. And I can say this knowing especially I'm not breaching protocol, because the last time, Honourable Minister, you and I sat together, I think it was in Accra when we were in Ghana. And very blessed to have these relationships. So my question to you as we wrap up, I'm going to give each of you 60 seconds. A year ago, we would have met. We were looking at 2020, new year, new decade, new excitement, roaring 20s. The roaring 20s had teeth. We had no idea how deeply that roar was going to bite. Why are you a better leader because of 2020? Honourable Minister, why are you a better leader because of this year?
2020, it taught me tolerance. It taught me agility. If anyone in government understood what to be agile is, we learned that. But even speedy decision-making process. So because, for example, we met weekly, what was bad is there was no knocking off time. So we knew that we can work 24 hours a day, around the clock, because we had to save lives. We had to save livelihoods. So it taught me patience. It taught me, as I'm saying, tolerance. Sitting around the table as a minister, listening to a sector that was bleeding, at times taking punches on behalf of government, but have to endure that and understand that these people are just not fighting. They are going through pain, and learn to empathize, but also learn to go and fight on their behalf with my colleagues, so that I don't have to deliver bad news to them. So that's what 2020 has taught me, and the strength of working together. in practical way. Working together, I mean, you move from government meetings to sectoral meetings, to feedback, to get inputs. So it was a true spirit of being able to work together. I think that's what, if there's anything that enhances how I see the sector, how I am able to work, it has enhanced my respect and my, my respect and honor for being able to have colleagues, both in private and public, to be able to sit around the corner and around the table and find solutions.
That's such a beautiful way of putting it.
I can write a book about it.
I think quite honestly, if you wrote your memoirs about this year, people would think it's fiction, not nonfiction. That's the challenge of this year. You've used words that people don't usually ascribe to government. Agility. You've talked about practical solutions, creating those partnerships. And it's been interesting how, if there's anything I've seen, it's been empathy. Everyone has been hurting during this year, including people in government, because as much as you're the Honourable Minister, you're still human, you're still Madam. Everyone's been impacted. So it's lovely that I always argue that you find out who your friends are in crisis, because these are the people that really stand with you. So Gloria, building on what the Honourable Minister has kindly shared, very honestly, why are you a better leader because of this year?
Well, I wonder if I would say I'm a better leader. I've seen so much. It has taught me a lot of humility. If I just switch quickly to my role as the chairman of the Solidarity Fund, I have seen so much hell, if I were to call it that. People have suffered. People have been through a lot. And we had to respond to people in the suburbs, to people in the townships, to people in the rural areas. This COVID chose no class, no money, no poverty. It just went through the same way. And people had to survive in the same way. So, and I think that is what it has taught me, that you can actually be in an equal space. And COVID equalized people in this sense. And I think the second one is our faith got really tested this year, extremely tested. The sense of hopelessness, the sense of wishing to be made to believe again, because it just today somebody's dead, tomorrow you are going to memorial service of another one, and then tomorrow it is so and so, and then the whole house has been. So I'm not sure if it has. I can't tell anymore if this year has taught me to be a good leader, as opposed to it has shown me my own vulnerability, and just that it can be that sometimes you're just going to say, God help me, I've done what I can.
Yes.
And the rest is yours, because I cannot help anymore. So maybe in that sense, one is an experienced leader in that sense, as opposed to maybe a strong leader.
But it's so beautiful what you're saying, because I think part of the strength of this year has been leaders showing their weakness, and it brought a humanity to leadership that opened up those connections that were needed. We always talk about speaking with one voice. We always talk about partnership. This year forced it because everyone needed each other. So Maribel, to you, Madam. Why are you?
You said a lot of things that I was meant to say, which is great, because we think the same. But I think that for the first time ever, everybody at the same time faced the same thing, which is unique. So being humble has been really something that we have all seen, because otherwise wouldn't be possible. But at the same time, it was an opportunity to show leadership and trying to work together, tireless, and we never work as hard without tourists. It's like sometimes how this could happen, and we went through it. So we know that we are all weak, because we know that, and ironically, we launched a report before this happened that talked about resilience. So we were analyzing resiliency for many years and the different crises, and then we, went through that. But we are resilient, And we knew that, and we still know it, and now more than ever. So basically, it's a question of being all of us coordinating, traveling together. There is no other way. Keep going, and like that, we will be much better than we are. I don't think we are going to go out of this better, because it's not like that. But it's good that we take all the opportunities that and all the learnings and all those takeaways. We take them with us, because we could be working differently, but all together, in the private and the public sector.
That's very true. Xhanti, sir, why are you a stronger leader and a better leader because of this year?
I would say for me, I think it's a level of focus. I think when the president announced the lockdown, the world seems to have just been quiet. We suddenly, you were suddenly sitting at home and looking around and thinking, what is happening? And I think that required a lot of introspection, a lot of focus. Yeah. We had to be focused and say, what is it that actually matters? How do I keep myself alive? How do I focus on the important things, and how do I support those I can support during this time? And I think that is something that for me has never happened. Just that silence and the requirement for focus and being, straight-minded. Indeed. And I hope it's something that stays, that when the world goes back to normal, if it ever does, that those lessons are not lost.
It's a beautiful way you put it, because before this, we were always looking at what we were doing, when we were doing it, how we were doing it, where we were doing it. We didn't wonder why we were doing it. And it shifted that to stop and think about the why, because the what was taken away, the when was taken away, the where was taken away. Bart, from your perspective, 2020 has made you a better leader because?
I think what the reality of the past year has shown us that, first of all, I think the world order and the world's financial model and the way we do business, if we haven't learned by this experience that we have to change, then we'll never learn. Okay? Indeed. Because I think what happened is that all our values, all the isms, price earnings multiples, structures, gearing, whatever it is, all the business models of the world have been shown up to be vulnerable to this one little mysterious hidden disease, right? Sickness. And it's actually just rocked us, and you have no defenses. We have no defenses. We don't know. It doesn't select rich or poor, it just selects, right? Okay. And it's very, very, so everything has been challenged, right? And now what I tried to say earlier is that your world suddenly has become, it's bigger because you suddenly can hear from everybody what the problems are and the challenges are, and it's suddenly so small because it's right in our midst. This hidden demon is in our midst. And it's now, how do we react to that? And what are we going to do knowing what we know now that's better, and not that we're exposed to the same challenges again? How do we insulate ourselves to be able to? We all talk about the vaccine being the answer. And it's I'm a bit fearful that once we've all been vaccinated, we're going to go back to doing exactly what we did before. I think there are messages out there, guys, that we in actual fact need to do things differently. We need to take care of those around us. And the fact is that the people who are suffering out there and who suffered the most are the poor, right? That if we don't bring them into our society, we don't bring them into our economy, don't see them as the asset that they really are, then we don't have a future. And the world doesn't have a future. And it's no longer, the icons that are carrying it, because the icons also get corona. They also get sick. They're as vulnerable as the rest of us. And we really are just so intertwined with each other and so dependent upon each other. And each one of us must start by looking around us and looking around us as much as we can. And those who've been blessed to make a difference, we should really go out and run at it and make a difference. And I just want to say to our Minister of Tourism, I think when I met you, when we were trying to open the Leonardo, remember? And we had coffee and we met for the first time. And by the way, I think you stayed in our hotel when the two of you met at Labadi Beach in Accra.
Yes.
Okay, but when we met you, right, and that's a nice property, same ethos and value, fabulous people. When we met you, right, and I met you, you were just new in the job, right? And it was 3 or 4 months before you got thrown in the deep end, right? Am I right? Okay. And I just want to say to you that I've admired your fortitude. I've admired your courage. I've admired how you ran at the problem, and you've not always given us the answers that we wanted because you couldn't. But I must say, I think you've been a big asset for us during this very difficult time, and we need to take our hat off to you. You're a great lady. Thank you.
Well spoken, sir. I must say, Mother Nature has an ally in our great guardian angel of tourism and our lovely Honorable Minister of Tourism. So 3 minutes until we close. I have the challenge of actually trying to summarize our discussion because His Excellency President Ramaphosa needs the output from this conversation for his address tomorrow. So what I'm coming out with is this. What is very clear from this conversation is that South Africa is engineered for the new world of tourism. We have a credible scope of offering. We've already had that. But even on top of that, we have an unbelievable youth force, which is going to be the future of our country, who are going to be our advocates for tourism. Exactly as you said, Honourable Minister, infrastructure is a priority, including, as Maribel said, biosecurity, an important part of our offering. The investment portfolio is there, and you're focusing on the issues as the enablers, not simply putting out solutions that we might not know if people have the problems or not. Very importantly, and Bart, you've mentioned it, and it came up before us when, well, we recognize there is a change in travel technology and change in how people are traveling. The value of travel has changed, and the values of travel has changed. We are sensitive to those changes and not just assuming that what happened in the past will be what's happening in the future. Very importantly, we have an exceptional opportunity in terms of domestic market as well as regional market. It's literally inside our doors and on our doorstep. We have clarity around the absolute partnership that exists between public and private. That has been brought to life in a way never seen before. And this year has not blurred the line, it's erased the line between the two. Communication is critical, clarity of communication, Gloria, as you were saying, speaking overtly to the investment opportunity, but also the invitation to the world to come back and help rebuild the future of tourism through international, through regional, and through domestic. Because exactly as was said by Bart, and I think this was a real quote to take back to His Excellency the President, the world will invest in people that have the confidence to invest in themselves. Absolutely beautifully said. So, as we wrap it up, I want to genuinely thank all of you for your time, for your sharing, not just for your content, but for the chemistry and for your character. You've all been invaluable in this conversation. All of you have been tireless champions this year. We're almost at the finish of 2020, even if it's not the end of COVID-19. Oh, thank God it's the end of a year we didn't anticipate. So I ask all watching to please thank all of our incredible speakers for being with us today. Thank you for taking the virtual stage. Thank you, Honourable Minister, for giving me the great blessing of being your moderator, and I thank the Department for all the help. To all five of you, genuinely, stay safe, stay strong, stay hopeful, keep your hands clean. And I really hope that next time we can have real hugs and not virtual hugs, whether or not. So
thank you very much.
Take care,
take care, everyone. Stay safe.